Is tinnitus a brain health problem? Is a question that I think we've been trying to answer for the last 40 years. And we have to kind of dial back to when we started to look at tinnitus and where we thought that tinnitus is a sound in the ear. But in the last, I want to say 15 years, we've kind of come to realize that tinnitus is not just an auditory problem. There's problems with sleep, there's problems with attention. People have a really hard time concentrating in their work. They have a hard time engaging in relationships in terms of communicating with others. So, what I found in my research, which is looking at a whole brain approach using what we call EEG or recording brain waves, is that tinnitus is not just lighting up the auditory regions, but it's also activating regions that are extra auditory, which involve other things like attention and sleep and emotions and mood. So we see that our story is consistent with what patients report, that the brain is involved as a whole and not just the sound part of it.
This makes sense because what we see in terms of the causes of tinnitus is that hearing loss is a common cause, but not the only cause of tinnitus. And someone can have essentially no changes to hearing, but all of a sudden develop significant tinnitus. And research has studied, I imagine, different connections between certain symptoms and other networks of the brain. What are the core functions of the brain related to tinnitus?
Attention is one of the most important functions of the brain with tinnitus. We see that there is what is called a top-down tinnitus, where there is a connection that's coming from the brain down to the auditory areas, which can be dysfunctional. And we see this essentially in people who don't have hearing loss, but they experience tinnitus. So that's one thing. So attention is one. Stress, big factor that modifies tinnitus. Everybody can relate to it. We see specific connections in between the regions that are involved in stress and that are involved in tinnitus. Mood, depression, anxiety. We also see the more subcortical regions are more active in tinnitus as well. What is less known and something that we're very interested in is memory. There is not a lot of consensual evidence whether memory is affected is it because of the tinnitus or is it because that we're not able to pay attention? But that's a little bit murky area. But we do see that the parahippocampus, which is a region involved in auditory memory specifically, is one of the generators of tinnitus. So in this way, a lot of the other brain regions are involved.
What we're really looking at here is to understand the tinnitus brain health problem. We have to be very clear on how much of the ear is responsible for tinnitus. We can measure the ability to hear with a hearing test. There are more specific hearing tests like high pitch or high frequency hearing tests and otoacoustic emissions. Those are very specific tests. If anything, they give us knowledge on how much of the hearing organ cells are involved potentially. That said, someone can have a significant hearing loss, but the actual reason why their tinnitus has gone from low, mild to severe could be something completely unrelated. So in some ways, a hearing test that shows, oh, you have a mild hearing loss, or yes, your hearing test showed you have a high-pitched hearing loss, it can be a sort of false signal, and it can make you believe, or someone might tell you that your tinnitus is caused because of your hearing loss. But if we think about this further, logically, that hearing loss was either already there or progressively changing very slowly over the years. But this individual experienced relatively quick changes and an increase in loudness to their tinnitus. So there's usually something more than just the hearing loss. And let's go into this something more, right? The tinnitus being a brain health problem potentially implies that there's other important areas that something has gone wrong, something is abnormal. Let's dive into the research there and your impressions there on stress, anxiety, mental health, and how that can trigger tinnitus or potentially sustain the loudness of it.
Mm-hmm. So, absolutely, like you said, some person can have hearing loss but not tinnitus, but someone can also have no hearing loss but tinnitus. And I think the stress plays a major role. A lot of the people in our community have said that I have stress-induced tinnitus, in fact. So for me, when I have tinnitus, I have high frequency tinnitus in my right ear when I feel extremely stressed. So at that time, I take a step back, I manage my stress. So couple of ways I manage my stress is deep breathing. We know that there is literature right now that is showing the role of breathing and how breathing can actually modulate certain regions in the brain, and which are directly connected to some of these regions that are both involved in tinnitus and involved in stress as well. So in that sense, you get a more what we call top-down modulation of your tinnitus by actively engaging in changing your stress levels. That can look differently for different people. For me, it's breathing. I even sometimes just go to sleep, take a nap. That works for me as well. For some people, it can be listening to calming music. Some people, it can be going for a walk. So stress management can look differently for different people. So that's one thing that we
And
can.
I'll say this point blank that, in my opinion, stress can be the cause of someone's tinnitus increase.
Mhm.
Now, they may have never heard tinnitus before, and stress can be the cause of that onset of tinnitus. They may notice a spike or an increase in the loudness of their tinnitus, and stress can also be the cause of that. It's something that most doctors wouldn't diagnose. It's something that most doctors would say, I don't know what caused this. But those of us who are specialized in this field can say, through a diagnosis of exclusion, we've ruled out hearing loss, we've ruled out jaw TMJ, neck issues, we've ruled out medication changes. Therefore, the most likely culprit for the cause of your tinnitus is, in some cases, stress, right?
Hmm. Absolutely. Stress can also look like, losing a job. It can look like losing a member of the family, so grieving. It can also look like just work stress, just having a stressful job at work. So a paper by my colleague Sven Benesta in cerebral cortex actually shows this actual connection. So there's a functional connection between the regions that encode stress and the loudness components. And you see that in people who are highly distressed with their tinnitus actually show an increased connectivity between these regions. So there's more exchange of information between loudness and stress in people who are very stressed by it. So yes, in that sense, it's also an internal learning process that, okay, so I'm associating the sound with the stress, and the brain sort of learns it as well. So now it becomes the new norm for the brain to associate the sound that they're hearing with the stress. So that's also one of the reasons why it's harder to modify it.
If you follow Treble Health and get value from these videos, I would highly recommend that you watch the full video from this clip right here, or subscribe to this clip's channel. Every little bit counts, and your support means the world to me. This is Dr. Ben Thompson with Treble Health.